During this section, we're going to look at the syntax of JavaScript and the structure of the language. A JavaScript statement is code that is executed, for instance, with an alert message. If this code was to be put in the head portion of the HTML document, as soon as the head portion of the HTML document is loaded, this alert message would then be executed. Here we have a basic HTML page with not much on it. Let's go ahead and add some JavaScript to it. To add some JavaScript, for right now, anyhow, we'll just use a script tag. Later on, we will not use this because we want to achieve a complete separation between the HTML and the JavaScript. Within the script tag is where we can add our JavaScript statements. Let's just put a simple alert box here, which will pop up a message. Let's save it and go back to our HTML document. Now, as soon as we refresh the page and the head section of the HTML page is loaded into the document, this will be executed. And there's our message. If you notice, nothing else is on the page yet because the body has not been loaded. Once you press OK, the rest of the document will load. Since JavaScript is a loosely typed language, we don't have to explicitly declare the variables with their type. This happens within the language itself as the variable is assigned. For instance, if you want to declare an int, you put in a number without quotes, and it automatically becomes an int. For instance, a float. If JavaScript sees that it has a decimal, it automatically assigns it to that. If you want to make anything a string, for instance, a name, you simply put it in quotes. If you ever want to find out the type of variable you're working with, you can call type of on it. And you can also cast from one type to another. For instance, if you have a number value that is a string, you can cast that to an int and vice versa. JavaScript has a number type, which can either be an int or a float, with a decimal point or without a decimal point. In dealing with numbers and strings, many operators will auto-convert to a particular type. For instance, if you multiply 2 as a string with 3 as an int, it becomes 6 as an int. The JavaScript string type is basically anything in double quotes or single quotes. There is no char type in JavaScript. You can return a particular letter of a string, but this is still returned as a string type, not as a char. To concatenate two strings together, you use plus. Because the same operator is used for addition as well as string concatenation, we have to do a type conversion if we want to add one as a string to one as a number. In this case, it defaults to string concatenation, making 1, 1 or 11 instead of 1 plus 1 to be 2. If you need to escape a special character, you use the backslash, as you would in many other languages. For instance, the single quote, double quote, ampersand, and so on. As we saw in the last slide, if you concatenate a string and an int, it defaults to a string. If you want to convert a string that has a single int in it, it strips away all of the other text and only returns that integer value to you. If you try to parse a value that doesn't have that type in it, it returns NaN, which stands for not a number. Also, strings act as arrays. To access a particular character, you can use the index to get that character, or you can use char@, two different methods that accomplish the same thing. There are two ways to do comments in JavaScript. For a single line comment, you can do 2 forward slashes. To do a multi-line comment, you can do a / asterisk, as you would in C++ or Java. The for loop is also the same as it is in Java and C++. You declare the index in the for statement, do the condition, and then you do the auto increment. JavaScript has a number of built-in math objects. ABS returns the absolute value. SEIL rounds the number up. Floor rounds the number down. Round simply rounds the value to the nearest integer, whether high or low. Max and min accept a range of numbers and return the highest or the lowest value respectively. The logical operators in JavaScript are familiar to other languages, and most logical operators do an automatic type conversion. For instance, if you do a comparison, is 5 less than a string value of 7, it returns true. However, if you want to check both the type and the value to see if they are the same, you have to do a 3 equals or a not equal equal. The if-else statements in JavaScript are similar to many other languages. You have if, condition, then a statement. Else, another condition. If you need an else if, you have to do else space if. One nice thing about JavaScript is almost anything can be used as a Boolean type. Basically, it's false if it has an int as a 0, a float as a 0, if it's not a number, an empty string, null, or defined. Anything other than that is going to be true. If you want to explicitly convert something to a bool value, which is true, false, you can do a Boolean keyword or not. Since we are trying to add an integer and a string using the plus symbol, it defaults to concatenation instead of to addition, which a result will be 55 instead of 10. While loops are the same as in other languages too. You have while, condition, do a statement, or a do while. Do something once and then evaluate to see if we want to do it again. Also, in JavaScript, we can use break and continue within the loops. In JavaScript, arrays is a common way to store a data. They can be initialized a couple different ways. You instance an array with the square brackets, it can be empty, or you can instance it with the values already in it. Once an array has been declared, you can put a value at any index you want to. For instance, if you have an array of length 2, but you want to put the value at position 8, you simply store it at that index, and the array automatically expands to accommodate. The values in between 2 and 8 are going to be empty. In working with arrays, you have a number of different options, and data structures too. You can make an array a list, a queue, or a stack, or so on. For instance, if you want to make it a stack and work at the top of the list, you can do push or pop. Or you can work at the front of the list and do unshift and shift. You can also do things like reverse and split and so on. Strings can be split at a particular delimiter and stored in an array. Once in an array, they can be manipulated in a number of different ways. To merge an array into a single string and by placing a delimiter between them, you can call join. Since JavaScript is an event-driven language, most of the work happens in a function. Once the function is called, usually through an event of some type, the code is then executed. Let's take a look at a few of these things, and let's remove what we have done, and let's build a function that builds an array with some spaces in it so we can demonstrate the auto-expanding array. We'll build one that displays odd numbers with some spaces in it, and one that displays even number with some spaces in it. So we first declare our array, which is going to be A. It's going to be an empty array. In index spot 3, let's add the number 3. At index 6, let's add the number value 6. And also at index 9, let's add the value of 9. And then we will do a join. We'll join all the values in the array together on a dash. And then we'll display this to the screen in an alert box. There it is. Okay. Now let's go back to the code and duplicate this function. And we will do the same thing for even numbers. Instead of 3, 6, and 9, we will do it 2, 4, and 6. And instead of a joining on a dash, we will join on a tilde. Let's change the name of the function call and make sure this code works. There we go. Let's make this a bit more interesting and let's build a random machine that randomly generates a 0 or 1 using the math.random. Math.random gives us a decimal value between 0 to 1. So we want to call round on it to the round up or round down, which gives us a 1 or a 0 or a Boolean value. Then we can say if random, meaning if it's a 1, we'll display the even array, otherwise we'll display the odd array. Let's save our document and see how well it works. Okay, there's an even and there's an odd. JavaScript has two special values of null and undefined. Undefined means the variable has not been declared and it does not yet exist. A null value means the variable exists, but it is either empty or it was given a null assignment. Why does JavaScript need both of these? Well, in some circumstances, you might want to know if a variable has been defined, if it exists. If it exists, you might do condition A. If it does not exist, you might do condition B.